Yes, we are live, Shimri.
Okay, hi everyone. So thanks to Gmat Club, I'm so excited to be here. This session today will talk about interview prep for London Business School and INSEAD. If you're watching this session, I hope you know these schools. I hope you apply to these schools. I hope you received a presentation to these schools. If you didn't, I think that's still okay. I hope you'll gain quite a lot from this session. So just a bit about myself. My name is Shimri Winters. I'm the head of the strategy at ARINGO MBA Admission Consulting. I'm a London Business School alumnus. I used to interview candidates for London Business School for 8 years. That's a bit about me. This is my only marketing slide. I'm very good at marketing. So ARINGO MBA Admission Consulting, we are really good. We help candidates, regular candidates, get into top schools. We do all these things that you can see, from chances estimation till scholarship help, and everything in the middle, like actually getting accepted into top schools. So that's what, check us out on aringo.com. That's us. And what I didn't say is I'll be reading through your comments throughout the presentation, but at the end of the presentation, I'll also go through all the comments and see, try and answer whatever I can. So, or answer most of the comments. So feel free to start writing down questions throughout the presentation. One more thing about this presentation, my tactic is to try and cover a lot of information quickly, so then I can answer your questions and comments on YouTube. So this is a live session. I will see your questions. Let's get going with it. Okay, so another slide. Okay, we're very good. I told you we're very good. Goodbye. So the agenda. I thought before we dig in to the interview preparation is we just talk, one or two slides about London Business School, one or two slides about INSEAD, and then we can actually look at both interviews. They're actually quite similar, with little exceptions for each school. So London Business School, fantastic school. I think if you speak to people in Asia, in the US, in South America, in Europe, and I don't know which continent, Africa. I was looking for which continent I missed. Great brand throughout the world, ranked at, the top lists of every single list. If you look at the Financial Times, top 5, 6 in every year in the last, few years, ranked number 2 in the world right now. Again, amazing school. Obviously, London Business School is based in London, and that's where the main campus is. There's also a campus for executive education in Dubai. And that's about it. Just a few stats kind of thing. So the MBA program, and again, this discussion is mainly around the MBA program, although London Business School also offers Masters in Finance, Master in Management, Master in Financial Analytics, and Executive MBA programs. The programs start in September only, and there's a couple of rounds to apply, where round 1 is 1 year before the application. If you're on this session for interviews, you know all this. What do you need to do to apply to London Business School? Well, there's a few prerequisites. First of all, for every top MBA, any top MBA program, you need to have a minimum of work experience. Most programs is 2 years. Some programs actually ask for 3 years minimum. Another thing is to have an undergraduate degree. I have to admit that I've had candidates for London Business School and for INSEAD without an undergraduate degree, but these were very unique candidates with an exceptional life story. You will need the Gmat. There's no Gmat waivers or GRE waivers. You need one of these exams. And if English is not your mother tongue or you didn't study in English, you will have to pass IELTS or TOEFL or PTE, one of these English exams. Let's say you have these prerequisites. Now you just need to apply to London Business School. There's usually one essay and maybe one optional essay as well. There's some online application stuff. There's the CV. You need 2 recommendations, pay the application fee, and get your transcripts, and that's it. You can apply. Now, I copied here the process from London Business School. They've made it really simple. You submit your application, and then you are they decide if you get interviewed or you don't get interviewed. If you get interviewed, then there's a decision if you pass that interview and you get an offer, or you don't get an offer. So it's quite simple. Let's look at INSEAD. Again, I'm running very, very quickly, but you can start asking me questions on the side. I can see someone's written one question or said it's okay, so great. If we look at INSEAD, again, one of the most respectable brands in the world. I speak to people, again, from all continents, from all countries. You know, they talk about INSEAD a lot. INSEAD's been going on 50 years. It actually has 2 intakes, so you can start your studies both in September or in January. Very similar intakes, but the January intake has another 2-month internship, and the September intake doesn't. Check out my other presentations about London Business School and INSEAD. I go through all this in great detail. Ranking, I mean, I think INSEAD was ranked #1 in the Financial Times in global MBA programs, like 3 or 4 out of the last 5 years. So amazing ranking. 2 main campuses in France and Singapore. Many rounds, because like we said, there's 2 intakes and each one has 4 rounds. So actually there's 8 rounds every year. Application very similar to London. It's just longer. Okay, so at London there was 1 essay. INSEAD has 6 essays or 7, depends how you count the career essays. You need a resume, you need 2 letters of recommendation, all the prerequisites identical to London. And the process, although they have a longer infographics, it's the same process. Basically, you apply and then you get a decision. If you're selected for an interview, then you interview and then you get a final decision. So that was very quickly about London Business School and about INSEAD. I already have a question, so I'm actually going to answer it because I was going to say something like this about the pass rate of London Business School and INSEAD. So you can look at the total rates. They're around 20-something% of pass rates to these, acceptance rates to these schools. And I've spoken to London Business School and to INSEAD admission members, and they both gave me like an answer which I really like. Basically, there's a 50% chance of getting an interview and a 50% chance of passing the interview. Okay, but remember, that's a global statistics regarding everything. And if you have a unique profile, if you have a diverse profile, if you have a high Gmat, if you have an interesting life story, then your chances are obviously higher to receive an interview. If you have a great application, you worked with ARINGO, it's amazing. And if you interview very well, if your communication skills are very well, if you pass your message in a nice way, if you have a good rapport with your interviewer, obviously your chances of passing the interview are higher than 50%. Okay, so in a global way, when you look at their stats, it's 50%. If I look at our stats, like we help a lot of people prepare for the interviews, they're much higher than 50% when you actually receive the interview. But that's another story. Check out our statistics on aringo.com. Okay, great. Before we touch the interviews, there's just one little new component that both schools have introduced, if I remember correctly, 3 years ago. Both schools use the same platform called Kira, and they both have video interviews. The main difference is that INSEAD, once you apply to INSEAD, you need to now submit a video interview, which I'll explain. And at London Business School, it's you only need to submit it if you reach the interview stage. So at INSEAD, everybody submits a video interview. London Business School, only the 50% that receive the interview. What is a video interview? Well, actually, it's pretty basic. And you go online to the system, you see a question, you have 40 seconds or 45 seconds, depends which platform, you can see here the details, to think about your answer. And then you have, I think it's 90 seconds to, sorry about that, 90 seconds to, or 60 seconds, depends which school, to answer your answer. And usually you have, at London Business School, you have the first question and the second question is random. At INSEAD, I think the questions are more random. Again, you can check us out on, just Google ARINGO video interview. You'll find so much information about this. Easy. This isn't a huge portion of your total amount of effort for the schools. A lot of people ask me, so what's the weight of this video interview? And actually, I've talked to many admissions and I haven't received a clear answer. So it seems like it's between 0 effect and very little effect. And I don't think this will make a huge chance, because a huge difference, because at London Business School, they've already invited you to an interview, and now a lot of weight is on the interview itself. And then INSEAD, again, if your application isn't very good, you know, I don't even know if they'll dig into your interview, a video interview, too much. If your application is wonderful, again, it's going to be very hard to ruin this video interview. So again, I would take it very seriously, but it's not the, it's not where the big, where the heavy points are. Okay, that was the video interview. That's it. So all that talking very fast brought us to this moment, which is how to prepare for an interview. Yay! So what's the interview? Again, money time. Okay, you've made it. You've passed the first stage. Okay, they've read your application. They liked your application. The easiest thing is to not invite you for an interview. Don't think it's easy to invite you for an interview. So this is a great achievement. You've made it. Now we have to go to the next stage. Who interviews you? In these two schools, London Business School and INSEAD, it's usually, in most cases, for the full-time MBA, alumni. So people just like me who finished the degree, it can be a year ago, it can be 20 years ago, it can be 50 years ago, are randomly or less randomly, they were volunteered or they were asked by the school to interview candidates, and they will interview you. The reason I say this is a lot of times you might know someone who knows one of these interviewers. You might look them up on LinkedIn and you might have some kind of connection to these interviewers. And before COVID times, all the interviews, or most of them, used to be face-to-face. And therefore you used to interview with someone from your country or even from your city. Obviously today there's more flexibility about that because most of the interviews are conducted online or via Zoom or something like that. I just wanted to mention, if you're taking this London Business School INSEAD, how to prepare for an interview, and using it for other schools, that in other schools, usually it can be alumni that interview. It can be a second-year student in a lot of the American schools, and it can be a member of the admission committee. Okay, so it really depends which school. And also, there's sometimes some random things. Okay, I've seen at London Business School suddenly AdComs interview, and I've seen second-year students interview for Chicago, where I'm used for alumni to interview. So I have seen different things. So again, check out who's interviewing you, because you might want to prepare to talk in that kind of way to the interviewer. Okay, fine. I received the interview. Yay! Now what? Okay, first of all, just read the instructions. I know this sounds really, really basic, but sometimes you need to contact the interviewer. Sometimes you just receive the message. We received the message from London Business School Round 1 interviews. I think it was a couple of days ago, can't remember. And we didn't receive the names of the interviewers yet. So people received, you have an interview, great. And we will let you know in a week who your interviewer is. So just read it, just make sure, don't panic. Okay, just try and understand what's happening there. A lot of the times you will receive the name of your interviewer and you need to contact them. So then it's up to you, don't wait for the interviewer to contact you. Here's an alumnus, working, he's doing a favor to the school. No one's paying him for this. You need to contact them, make sure the interview is conducted on time. You'll usually get a time slot, etc. Definitely, check your online presence. Okay, this I always recommend. Google yourself, but it's fine to Google the interviewer. Okay. At ARINGO, after our candidates interview with people, we interview them. So we have a lot of intelligent reports on interviewers. We know a lot of times what interviewers used to ask. And it's absolutely fine to ask your friends if they interviewed with them. Check these people out on LinkedIn. Try and understand who they are. Are they married? Are they, where do they work? What year did they go to the school? Do you have any common background with them that they might find interesting? I think that's absolutely fine. Obviously, the next stage is prepare answers to common questions. Okay, and that's what we're going to go through. And maybe then, maybe try and think about specific questions that this interviewer might want to know about you. For example, if I have a very big gap in my CV, that's probably going to come up. If I have a very interesting hobby, if I'm just going to throw that out to the air and not think that the interviewer might ask me, well, that's wrong. Okay, so you have to prepare for every part of the interview. INSEAD have 2 interviews. They're pretty straightforward. London Business School do 1 interview, and there's 1 element called a presentation, only at London Business School, and I'll go through that later. Okay, so here are some obvious tips before we actually dig in to specific examples and questions of interview. I'm just reminding you, you can keep asking me questions on the YouTube live, and I will go through all of them. The plan for this presentation, I'm now going to dig into some common questions, explain about what the schools are looking for, and then answer your questions. So I will get to all of them. So I just put here some general tips. I don't think I need to read them too much. You can freeze this if you're watching it in delay and record whatever questions here you want, take a picture. But again, what's very, very, very important is to respect the interviewer. I know this sounds silly, but I had a candidate a couple of years ago who, I think he was away, I think he was abroad, and he got the interviewer name, and he contacted the interviewer like very late in the game, and he said, listen, I can only interview next Tuesday at lunchtime. Now, I kind of know this interviewer, she contacted me and kind of said, I hope this isn't one of your candidates because this idiot is giving me times, like, he didn't give her any respect, okay? Like, you know, you can say, I'm abroad, I'm so sorry, I'm available on Tuesday, I hope that works for you. Or you can say, listen, I'm really busy at my work this week, but I'll make myself available any day next week, or any day, or any time after 3 o'clock, or, you know, you can explain why you can only be available certain times. Obviously, come on time, close your cell phone, you know, all this kind of stuff. Try not to bullshit too much in an interview, okay? Try and, you know, speak the truth. Obviously, we're all trying to impress, but, you know, what worked sometimes on paper, maybe you wrote an amazing achievement, is going to be sometimes very hard face-to-face when you're asked questions. And remember, the interviewer can dig in, okay? And he'll ask you, what's your biggest achievement? And then you'll say something, and then he'll dig in and ask you, okay, but why didn't your manager do that? And why didn't the other team member do that? And how come you, that are just an engineer at Amazon, are claiming to bring $600 million of business to Amazon? And like, he's going to ask you questions. So just try and be honest, try and make a good impression, and it should be okay. Now let's try and dig into the big questions. And again, you can look on our website. There's lots of information about how to interview. But the big 9 questions we'll look into, and the big 3, of course, you know, why do you want an MBA? Why our school? Okay, which is very different when you ask why INSEAD or why London Business School, and why now? Okay, so those are the big 3, the big 9 questions. Okay, so again, I told you after every interview, we check out with our candidates what they were asked. So far, we have 5,000 interviews plus on our platform. We have many more, actually. I don't know why that number is there. And these are the 9 most common questions. Now, again, this isn't to do with LBS or INSEAD. This is for both. And I think we'll dig into each one of them. So let's just dig in. So the first question is actually very, very popular for London Business School and INSEAD. And the reason is, it's a question that a lot of times when an alumnus interviews, he asks this. A lot of times when adcoms interview, they don't ask this question. So again, you have to prepare it. But you know, if you're not asked, you're not asked. Both at London Business School and at INSEAD, they will receive your application. That means they have your CV in front of them. Still, they will probably not invest too much time in reading through your application. Again, even if they read it, okay, you know, it was yesterday, I read through it very quickly, but I still want you to introduce yourself. I've seen here many mistakes, okay, don't be spontaneous, practice. Every answer usually should take between a minute and a half, maximum 2 minutes if it's something with a long example. This specific question can take 3 minutes, okay, to answer it, maybe even 4 minutes if you have a very interesting career. Never past 3 or 4 minutes. Okay, so never past 3 or 4 minutes. Keep some kind of chronological order. There's no right or wrong. I've seen people start like this answer with, okay, let me start at 18. I went to university. I really wanted to study law, and then I studied law and became a lawyer, and then I worked. Okay, so chronologically from 18 till today. I've seen reverse chronological order, works perfectly. Okay, great. So today I'm a lawyer, and I work in the biggest firm in Germany. I've been doing this for 2 years. Beforehand, I was a whatever, legal clerk. Before that, I was at university, and I also like to volunteer somewhere. So I've seen this reverse chronological order. That's fine. Or I've seen this as well. You can start with your present and just say, hi, well, I'm Shimri, I'm 28, I wish, and I'm a lawyer at the biggest legal firm in Germany. Let me tell you about my how I reached here. At 18, I went to study, then at 21, I finished, then at 20, okay, so that can work as well. What I would say is I don't just repeat your CV. You need to repeat the headings, okay, your titles. But I think it's very important to try and focus on why you made the moves, why you made the decisions. So at 18, you know, I really wanted to change the world. I wanted to get a nice infrastructure. And I felt that, you know, if I study law, that will give me the right tools. When I was 22, I understood I didn't want to be a lawyer. So then I wanted to work in a global company, and I went to work as a business development manager at Amazon. After 3 years, I was offered a promotion and a move to France. And that's why I decided to move to France. Or after 3 years, I decided I want to work in a small startup, which is why you can see I left Amazon for a startup. Okay, so what I'm saying is don't just say, then I moved to, no, explain why you did that certain move. Now, a very nice way to finish this, walk me through your CV, is kind of to explain why you're here today. And the way to do that is, and now I'm ready for my next challenge, which is an MBA. Okay, or now I really would like, you can hint here about your career goals, you can talk about why MBA, or you can just kind of mention, why, I'm here because I'm ready for an MBA. Please ask me, about my ambitions for an MBA. So that's a bit about walk me through your resume. One last thing that I didn't write down is a lot of times people ask me, is there a difference between walk me through your resume and tell me about yourself? Now, we've had this discussion at ARINGO forum maybe 1 million times. 90% of our consultants say, yes, there's a huge difference. Okay, I'm the one who says no, so I'll explain both views. So a lot of times, tell me about yourself. They're saying, forget the chronological order, forget, explaining every single job. Just tell them who you are, kind of thing. Okay, I'm 28, I'm a lawyer, I'm in Germany, and how did I get here? I studied in university, I moved to Amazon. So, and my view is it's kind of the same, but again, the emphasis should be a bit different. You should less talk about the exact position and what you did in each job, and just give kind of a bigger flow and a bit more about who you are today and what you do in your spare time, maybe, and something like that. So that's maybe a bit of the difference. But again, in both, you kind of need to practice walking through your past in a chronological order. Okay, I can see there's some questions on the chat here at YouTube Live. Keep asking them and I'll address all of them. So we've done 1 out of 9, big 9 questions. And again, as you can see, I'm kind of trying to keep the answers both for LBS and INSEAD. I don't think there's a difference in walk me through your CV for LBS or INSEAD. Okay, so now we'll start talking about some specific differences. Okay, so why MBA? This is a big question, and I've actually put here in the same page, why us? And the reason is, I think most, well, actually, I haven't done statistics about this, but I'm just going to lie and say 70% of interviewers will ask you why MBA, and then they'll move on maybe to career goals or something like that. And only 30% will ask, okay, but why London Business School or why INSEAD? Don't leave this up for grabs, okay? When you answer why MBA, you already try and insert into there why this specific school, okay? Don't even wait for that. Just insert ready when you're answering why MBA, why you want INSEAD, why you want London Business School. And again, you have to practice this, and don't go into, oh, that's such a good question, let me think. No, think about it at home. And don't say something like, well, because it's an INSEAD. Of course I want INSEAD. Because it's INSEAD, no. So when you're asked why MBA, you need to have a few reasons, okay? And the reasons can be, first of all, it's a degree, okay? And I want to learn in the MBA. I want to learn certain things. And you can mention what you would like to learn, okay? I really want to learn microeconomics and strategy and finance. And this is the only degree that combines those together. So that's one reason why I want an MBA. Another reason is I want an international network, which is why I'm not doing my local MBA here in my home country, but I want to go to INSEAD or London Business School. And now you can also kind of say a specific reason for your school. And I know London Business School has a diverse class of 70 nations and 90% foreigners, and I really would like to join the finance club because London is the center, or Singapore is the center for Asia. So now you start, so your third bullet can be already something specific about that specific school. So again, I strongly advise to kind of try and insert why this specific school in your why MBA answer. If you are asked, why specific school, yes, no problem. Okay, do a lot of research about the school. You need to know at least the names of 2 clubs, of 2 professors, of something interesting. Did you know that London Business School has a pub, Windsor Castle, which is connected with a secret door from in London Business School to the pub? Okay, that's something that you kind of need to know. Okay, because you need to explain to London Business School interviewer why you want London Business School. Okay, because the flexible curriculum, because the location. Why do I want INSEAD? Because there's no other degree I can finish within 10 months and go back to my job. And there's no other degree I can do half in Asia and half in Europe. Okay, so you need to kind of know these specific things. Wow, I'm talking very quickly because I'm going to answer all your questions at the end. So let's continue. I think after the interviewer has asked you, okay, so tell me about yourself, why MBA, they might ask, okay, let's dig in now a bit to you. And you can do this in many ways, okay? You can say, okay, tell me about a typical day at the office. Or tell me what you're most proud of. Tell me what you didn't like last week. Or tell me about your manager. So now they're digging into your professional career. What I like when people answer these kinds of questions, so just for the sake of this discussion, let's say he's asking you, what's your biggest achievement? What's your biggest failure? Or what are you most proud of, or whatever? I like when candidates answer with a clear structure. And you can Google, there's a nice star structure for the consulting people on this YouTube. I have my structure. It's very similar, the Shimri structure, whatever. I love my trademarks, which is basically giving a background, okay? The interviewer doesn't work with you. He doesn't know what Deloitte do in audit. Okay, they have no idea what an investment banker does in Holland. Give some kind of background. Now, it's not an interesting story if there's no complication. Okay, I like to call it Hollywood. Okay, otherwise I'll fall asleep. Okay, so give me something complicated. The client hated us. Why? We missed all the deadlines. We lost them a lot of money, and they're blaming us for everything that happened to them. Or the 2 teams I had to work with, they don't talk to each other. Or my manager, well, she went on maternity leave and there was no one to manage the project. Or we were missing a lot of information, whatever. So make it complicated. Okay, so now you've given me the background and you've explained why this is a very complicated situation. Now tell me what you did, okay? Because it's your achievement, or maybe your failure, okay? So what did I do? Well, first of all, I went to the client. I created a good relationship with them. I understood what bothers them. I tried to come up with a project plan that satisfied them. Then I went back to R&D. I showed R&D what I think the client would be happy with. R&D managed to do 80% of that. So I went back to the client. I then talked to my manager, who talked to his manager, okay, what did I do? Now, again, what I explained was a bit boring, but try and explain how you tackled the complication. And there's no achievement without a result, okay? Without someone seeing what you did and saying that was good. Now, what can the result be? It can be something your manager told you, you did a great job. It can be the client who said you did a great job, or your counterparty. It can be some kind of number, okay? And I'm so happy we managed to close the deal, or we did an upsale of $3 million, or I managed to save the client or save our company 17% year on year, whatever. All these are quantifiable results. Last but not least, if you are asked about some kind of failure story, or what would you have done differently, don't forget to mention at the end what would you have done differently. Okay, so what's the lessons learned of this project? In retrospectively, I should have communicated to my manager every 2 days the problems of the project, and then he wouldn't have been surprised 2 weeks later to understand that it's all going really badly. Retrospect, or now that I think of it, or straight after the project, I discovered a much better way to manage my time, and now I concentrate 80% of the time on 80% of the clients, but then I only allocate 20% for the 20% client, or whatever. Okay, so now I do something differently, because obviously if I fail the first time, I don't want to fail the second time. I want to do something better, different. Okay, so that was how to tackle an achievement failure. Again, these are the most popular questions at both INSEAD and London Business School. Let me just go back a bit to a few other questions here at the big 9. I didn't write a whole slide about them, but I think they're interesting. So we answered the walk me through your CV and why MBA and why London Business School. Usually the next question there would be around the career goals, okay? And a lot of the candidates have clear career goals on paper, but when you interview them, they start mumbling a bit. Well, I don't really know what I want to be when I grow up, but I know INSEAD's very good at consulting. No, I didn't ask you what INSEAD are good at. I asked you what your career goals are. And those are very different things. So what I would like to know is, I would like to know what your career goals are. Now, first of all, you can't write something in your application and then write something and then say to me something different. So it has to be correlated to what you wrote in the application. Second thing is some advice to your application. This has to make sense. Okay, so today, if you're a software engineer and your career goal is to be a marketing manager at Procter & Gamble, if you've only coded C++ for the last 4 years on billing systems, I can't really see that. I can't see the direct connection. It's okay to say you want to do a career shift, but show me a direct connection. Well, I used to be a software engineer, then I was promoted to a team manager. Now I want my MBA to go and do a few more business roles, for example, a product manager role at Amazon. Okay, that's a clear career goal, and long-term, I'm going to found my own startup. So that's a clear career goal. It makes sense. It's connected to my past, to the why MBA, and what I want to do in the future. How do you answer this? You can start with your long-term career goal. In the future, I want to found a startup. Short-term, post-MBA, I'm going to work at, you can do that way. Or you can just say post-MBA, I'm going to be a product manager. So you decide how you want to present this. Just remember to connect it to the MBA. If you weren't asked why MBA, this is where you can also insert your why MBA. So if after walk me through your CV, they ask you, okay, what are your career goals? So you can say, well, post my MBA, I want to be a product manager. And in the long term, I want to found my own technology company. In order for me to do this, I really want the MBA to strengthen my business education, to get an international network. So you can connect the missing questions kind of thing in the career goals as well. Don't forget, if you weren't asked why London Business School or why INSEAD, you can insert the why London Business School or why INSEAD in the career goals as well. And in order for me to make it to Amazon, I really plan to be an active member in the technology club and in the Women in Business club. Okay, so I now just threw 2 very popular clubs from London Business School, okay, to there. So we discussed biggest achievement, but a lot of times the interviewer might say, like, what are your 3 biggest strengths? Or what are your strengths in plural? Or if I went to your workplace, what would your colleagues say about you? Okay, which is kind of the same question. What are your strengths? To answer this again, you have to be very modest. Okay, you can't go and say, well, first of all, I'm the best. Second of all, I'm amazing. Third of all, my mom says I'm really handsome. No, don't say those. Okay, but you can say, listen, we actually have a 360 at my work, and I get a lot of feedback. And I've heard from my manager that one of my biggest strengths is my out-of-box thinking. For example, we had this project where everybody was stuck, and I managed to get the project going. Another strength of mine is my communication skills. I can really communicate to anyone. I'm in charge of the social activities. And a lot of times people come to me when they're in need for just to talk to someone. I feel this really helps both on a personal level, but also on a professional level. So here are 2 strengths, and I kind of showed an example. Weaknesses is actually a very tough question. I don't like it. I don't like it as an interviewer. I always see my interviewees put on the spot. And when I prepare people for an interview, and I prepare them for this question, I'm always worried because they actually have two options. Option number one, I say, I call it the shooting in the foot option, which means, discussing a real weakness that will actually make me look less good. Okay, so what's your weakness? Well, I'm less good with big numbers. I'm not very analytical. My language skills aren't good. I'm not a people's person. Now, all these might be true, but if you say this to an interviewer, you're not really presenting yourself in a very good way. So I call that the shooting in the leg, the doing something, the harming your interview. On the other hand, the second type of a weakness is the cliche weaknesses. Well, I work too hard. I don't have a good work-life balance. I'm always at work. I'm too good. I don't know to say no, okay? So these are the cliche weaknesses, right? Now, which do you choose? Between those two, to be honest, I actually prefer the second group. So try and prepare something like that doesn't sound too bad, okay? Well, to be honest, a long time ago, I didn't know to say no to people. I used to take on a lot of work. I used to work 20 hours a day, 6 days a week. And to be honest, I really thank my boss that called me and he said, listen, you won't be able to carry on like this. You need to know how to say no. You need to prioritize your tasks. And at 10 o'clock in the evening, you need to know how to go home. I really took this feedback. And today I feel I know how to manage my time and manage my tasks in a better way. So I showed some kind of weakness, but I straight away made it into my strength today. Okay? You can always use kind of a long time ago. So when I came to this job, I didn't know should I work on the big clients, on the small clients, and I just used to give them the same amount of time. And after a couple of months, I saw that actually we're losing money because the big clients where the big money is coming from are not getting the right attention. So now I've changed the way I work. I give the big clients more attention. The small clients, I kind of give small attention. Worst case, I lose some money there. And overall, my boss is happy and I'm happy. And okay, so I showed I did a mistake in the past, but today I'm much better in this. The last question I've seen more and more, I have to admit, less at INSEAD. I've seen it a bit more at London Business School. This is a popular question when admission committee members are interviewing, but again, at these schools, that usually doesn't happen so often. And a lot of times they ask, okay, is there something we should be worried about? And this is another kind of weakness question, and it's not a fair question to ask, but they ask it. And I think this is a great opportunity to show that you understand that there might be some kind of weakness in your profile, but you kind of can have done much better than that. So, well, yes, I think the admissions committee can be a bit worried for my 680 Gmat. I understand this is lower than the school average. Nevertheless, I think I've shown that in my undergraduate degree, I was cum laude, dean's list, merit for 3 years. And, I've taken 10 courses since, and I've done top 10% in all the courses. I'm really academic. The Gmat, I did do it while I was working 100% of the time and volunteering in 3 places. And that's why my Gmat wasn't so high. But, when you just look at my profile, maybe the admission committee is a bit worried about that. Another thing is, yes, I am married with children, but still I'm dedicated to this program. I don't know what else. Yes, I did have a gap of 1 year, but I took this 1 year to do a lot of volunteering, to travel the world, and just to kind of get energy for the next few years of work. And don't worry, I'm not going to run out from the MBA in the middle. Okay, so I would address something that's obvious on your profile. Just be prepared to answer these questions in an honest way. Okay, very honest way. Okay. Remember, London Business School also has a presentation. We'll talk about that in a sec. But at the end of the interview, I would also prepare 2 or 3 questions to the interviewer. And the questions shouldn't be too difficult. So I remember once when I interviewed for London Business School, someone actually asked me, do you know how the Brexit will reflect the economy? He asked me, and I was like, I'm interviewing you, not, why are you asking me this quite tough question? Who, economists and professors and Nobel Prize winners don't know the answer. Okay, so don't ask such a difficult question. know who the interviewer is, and don't forget to ask them questions that are relevant for them. So if the interviewer is very, very old, okay, he went to INSEAD 30 years ago, you might not want to ask them what's new in the school. Maybe they don't know, okay? But it's for an alumnus, they would always like to tell you about their story. So you can always ask them something personal, like, which course did you like the most? Or looking back, what do you remember as the best? Or if you had one tip for me, what do you think I should do? There's so many electives, there's so many courses, so many things, give me one tip. So try and ask very clear, defined questions that the interviewer, especially if he's an alumnus, like a London Business School or INSEAD, can give you from their experience. By the way, if an admissions committee member interviews you, they don't have an MBA from these places. So, you can't say, what was your biggest, what was your best experience? You can ask, give me one tip or something like that. Okay, so that was just about the questions to the interviewer. So INSEAD people, you can go and get a glass of water. Now I'm just talking about London Business School. They actually have a unique element called the presentation. And at London Business School presentation, it usually happens at the end of the interview when you've already been asked the big 9 questions. By the way, I didn't mention that the big 9 obviously are not mandatory, and any interviewer can ask you anything. But what we've seen is if you prepare those, you probably have 70 or 80% of your interview sorted. So London Business School have this presentation stage and or model. And what it is, it's a question that you haven't seen before. Okay, so you can't prepare it. And what they want to know is they just want to see that you can make an argument on a newly discovered topic. Okay, now you might not know anything about this topic. And you might not have clear views, okay, about this topic, which is fine. And by the way, the interviewer might know nothing about this topic and might know a lot about the topic. But all they want to see is that you're making kind of sense. Okay, now I've seen many, many mistakes at the interview stage, at the presentation stage. And I want to give you some of the common mistakes I've seen. So first of all, I think the most important thing is presenting the topic. I know it sounds like very, very basic, but if you don't present the topic of the interview, of the presentation, you might not be able to, the interviewer might not be able to understand what you're talking about. So let me just explain to you how it works. The interviewer gets a page with 5 topics. Now he might look at the page, he might not even look at the page, he might just say, topic number 3. So you need to present the topic, and you have 5 minutes to present the topic. Okay, so the interviewer will give you the question and leave you alone for 5 minutes. And then you need to present. So the first thing is to tell them what you're presenting. I've been asked to present as the new pension manager, head of investments. I was asked to present my new methodology for investments in the next 5 years. Okay, so I'm presenting the topic, whatever topic it is. The next thing is give me a couple of things, give me a couple of ideas. So as the head of investments, obviously the pension fund, the most important thing is to keep pension money. I don't want to lose the money. So my first methodology is going to be to do very safe investments with 80% of the money. The second thing is I do want to get high returns for my investors. And therefore, with 20% of the money, I'm going to go for less safe investments, for example, venture capital investments or whatever, cryptocurrency. The third thing is, as a pension fund, I think I'm going to be, the communication is very important. And I'm going to keep communicating to our investors and to our pensioners the different strategies of our investments. I'm going to actually hire a communication manager. And every month, I'm going to do a newsletter with all the news from our pension fund. Okay, so those, I gave you a couple of things of what I would do as the pension fund manager, investor, whatever, investment manager. And the last thing is conclude. Okay, conclude your presentation. Well, in conclusion, I was asked to present why, different topic now, why oil and gas are terrible for our economy, although they're the cheapest energy source right now, and why, as a head of Shell, I'm actually going to move into alternative energy. Great example. So I gave some kind of conclusion, I gave some kind of ending, okay? Start, middle, ending. And just the third obvious thing, obviously answer the question. Trust me, this is a very tough part of the interview. You haven't prepared anything. Just make sure you're answering the question. Read it twice. Make sure that you've actually answered the question and not just given me your view about alternative energy. But I didn't ask that. I asked, as the new Shell CEO, what would you change in the next 10 years? I didn't ask you about your views. I asked you, what would you change? A, B, C. Okay, so that's the LBS presentation, not an easy part. Okay, so we're actually finished. And I'm going to answer all your questions, I hope. But I just wanted to give you a couple more tips. Okay, so again, I used to interview for 8 years for London Business School applicants. And I hated applicants who didn't answer the question. So annoying. What's your biggest achievement? Well, let me tell you how clever I am. I'm so good. Or what's your biggest failure? Well, actually, I've never failed. No, tell me a failure. What are your career goals? Well, I'm not sure. No, you need to be sure. Why MBA? You need to be sure. Okay, so you need to give me answers to my questions. Make sure you answer the question. Like I said, time your answers. Okay, maybe 3, maybe 4 for walk me through a CV. Up to 1.5 minutes, maximum 2 to answer other questions. Obviously, respect the interviewer. Don't be late. Contact them on time. Everything else. Be sure to tell the interviewer how much London Business School or INSEAD are your #1 school. Okay? Very, very important. I actually interviewed someone and I said, which of the schools did you apply to? And he said, Harvard, Stanford, Columbia, and INSEAD. And I said, that's great. Which school is which number is London on those lists? He said, yeah, if I don't get into Harvard or INSEAD or Stanford, I might consider London. And I was like, well, I don't think London will consider you. We really want people who want to come to our school as their #1 choice. So just make sure that the interviewer knows that. I put here kind of name dropping. So I didn't have this so many times when I interviewed, but I remember a specific case where at the end of the interview, we got up, we shook hands. It wasn't such a good interview, just to be honest. He didn't pass. But then he kind of said, oh yes, Tom asked me to say hello. And John. And Rupert said, you're a nice guy. And I was like, okay, why are you name dropping so many people? And okay, if someone wants to say hello, I understand. It was a bit aggressive kind of thing. And I don't know anything to Tom, John, and Rupert. I just want the best people to get into London Business School. And I think all alumni want that. They're not looking for the name dropping. They're just looking to get the best people into class. To be honest, if there's one thing I used to look for when I used to interview people is, would I like this person to be in class with me? Would I find him interesting? Would I find him, would I want to collaborate with them? And a lot of people are very professional, but they're just very boring. And a lot of people are not professional enough. A lot of people are not educational enough. And I think all these 3 elements, so you have to be quite good at your education, Gmat or past education, your professional experience needs to be important, needs to be relevant and important, something interesting, but also your character. You just need to be a person that I feel I can get along with and cooperate with in class. Because the MBAs are very collaborative. You'll have a study group, you'll study together. And I just want to see these kind of 3 things together. If I see them, you've passed the interview. So be humble. Let your profile and application and character talk for you. And that's it. Once the interview is over, okay, what can you do? Well, not much, okay? And I know a lot of people are biting nails. I get so many WhatsApps and emails. Just had a phone call. We had an interview today. I'm sure they want to tell me how it was and what to do next. Well, actually, you just can't do next. You can bite your nails. You can pray to whoever you want to pray. And you can just wait. Okay, I definitely would thank the interviewer for interviewing you. Do it very quickly after the interview. Okay, up to 24 hours. Thank you so much for devoting the time. Thank you so much for making a stressful situation so comfortable or so nice, so pleasant. Thank you for sharing an example and give that specific example so he can see you're not copying and pasting something. But basically, that's it. If you hear the result from the school, whether it's a bad result or a good result, then you can perhaps, if you have the email of your interviewer, which doesn't always happen, you can contact them and say, listen, I'm really disappointed. I actually got a rejection letter. If you have any feedback for me, please let me know. Okay, or, I'm amazing. I got in, do you have any feedback? I would love to meet. I have to admit that a lot of times interviewers, again, they don't work for the school. They do this on their time. And if they didn't like you in the interview and they didn't pass you and you didn't get accepted, I'm not 100% sure all of them would actually give you feedback. So a lot of times they would say, well, I don't know what my weight was, but I thought you were good, and they're lying. But it is what it is. Okay, that's more of a character of a person. Some will give you feedback. And why not to get feedback, also for the MBA and, generally for life. This is someone experienced that interviewed you. So that's it. Check us out on ARINGO.com. You have my email here. I can always help with interview prep and with applications. If you want to drop me a line, feel free. But send me your CV and Gmat score as well, so I know who you are. And now I'm going to drink some water and answer your questions. Yay, here's my water. That was me drinking. So I'm going to look through all your questions. Remember, this is a live YouTube session, and I'm going to look through all your questions. So first of all, thank you if someone wants to drop off. Thank you very much. I really enjoyed this, and I really wish you the best of luck, especially if you did receive an interview for London Business School or INSEAD. Best of luck. And now let's go through the questions. Okay. So first question actually is nothing to do with the interviews, but don't worry, I'll answer everything. So I like this question from about being self-employed. Okay, so if you're self-employed, first of all, schools like this. Don't worry about it. Okay, the fact that you didn't work at Deloitte as an accountant is an advantage because there's many accountants from Deloitte. So just tell us about your profile and career, etc. But the question here is about, I'm not going to read your name, so it's a bit more discreet. The question here is about being self-employed, which references can a self-employed candidate bring? And this is a very big question. I've had it many times. I think maybe 15-20% of my candidates are self-employed. And their answer is whoever you have. It can be a co-partner. It can be a client. It can be some kind of lawyer or accountant that you work with. It can be a board member. It can be, worst case, someone from your past, someone from your volunteering, someone from your university. Okay, so the answer is whoever you have. Very good question about international experience. So I have to admit that these two schools, London Business School and INSEAD, do put a big emphasis on your international experience. Now, international experience doesn't mean that you went to live in Germany for 4 years. It doesn't mean that you relocated. It does mean that you've worked with international teams, that you have some kind of international exposure. This definitely, if you don't have any international exposure, this definitely can affect your chances at London Business School or INSEAD. It can affect your chances of receiving an interview, and it can affect your chances of the interview itself. How do you overcome this? Well, try and see if you do have international experience. And if not, just try and mention how well you communicate with teams from other backgrounds. Maybe you work for an international company and there was a team from Pakistan. Maybe you work with someone that came from another county or another state and spoke another language. I don't know, but try and show that you can communicate with different profiles than you. How long should the answers be in the interview? I think I answered that. Around a minute and a half would be amazing. And walk me through your CV, 3 or 4 minutes. So can the interview get technical? That's a good question. The answer is yes. The interview can everything. You decide how to continue this sentence. Can the interview? Yes. So first of all, the interviews are in English. And I've had interviewers which are from a local country speaking to a candidate from the same country. And the interview wasn't in English. Okay, so it was in in Switzerland, it was in Swiss, or in French, or in Swiss, in French, or in German, or in I don't know where. Okay, in Mexico, it was in Spanish. And let the interviewer do whatever they want, okay? So the fact that it's supposed to be in English, you're not going to comment to the interviewer, okay? He or she needs to lead the interview. Can the interviewer get technical? Yes. If they ask you about your work and you say, well, I'm a corporate lawyer and I work on cases of big, I don't know, technological companies, and I recently represented Google in front of the court. They can say, wow, that sounds amazing. Let's dig into that. Tell me a few more things about that. Who did you work with? Who was your counterparty? What did you do? What were your argument? Of course, the interviewer can do whatever they want. And if you say something interesting, they might want to follow up on that. So interview can go in any direction. Again, prepare the big 9, but that's just the beginning, right? They can definitely dig in. What's a good Gmat score, and can this affect your chances? Well, the answer is yes. Again, this is nothing to do with the interview. I think this is to do with getting the interview. London Business School and INSEAD average Gmat scores are around 710. And if your Gmat is above this score, then your Gmat is above the average. If your profile is also above the average, whatever that means, check out my other videos about how to get into these schools. But if your profile is interesting, you come from a good background, you progressed faster than your peers, maybe you have diversity, I don't know what, international experience, whatever, you tick all the boxes. So that's also above average. So anything above average will increase your chances, including good Gmat. Gmat's probably 30% of your application. So if it's above average, it's above average. Okay, someone asked me about sending an informal resume to LBS. So both these schools, if you check them out online, they have this opportunity. And if you go to their webinars, they'll say this, send us your CV. We'll let you know what we think. There's no harm in doing this. To be honest, this doesn't really help much. If you're a very young candidate or something, they might come back and say you're too young. Or if you're a very experienced candidate, they might say, check out our executive MBA. But if you're a regular, I don't know, candidate that has 4 to 7 years of experience and 1 or 2 promotions and a Gmat, they will probably say, wow, we encourage you to apply, okay? Because their aim is for as many people, qualified people as possible to apply. So you can send this unofficial resume to get some information or not, up to you. It's not such a big deal. Definitely, the next question is, can I ask the interviewer about their experience at LBS? Of course. This is one of the best questions I like asking at the end of the interview. Well, let me actually split this into 2. Let's say I'm the interviewer and I finished the interview. I'm the interviewer and I say, okay, John, thanks so much for the interview. I have to run now because I have another meeting. I really enjoyed it. Goodbye. Okay. So if you're John, the answer to that would be, okay, thank you, Shimri. I really enjoyed it. I see you're in a hurry. Goodbye. Or if I have any questions, may I ask you them via email? Yes, no, bye. Okay, so respect the interviewer. I just told you I'm in a hurry. But if I'm just saying like, oh, John, well, that was the interview. We're finished. Like, you can be more relaxed now. Would you like to ask me any questions? So I'm actually asking you to ask me questions. And now the answer should be, oh, yes, thanks so much, Shimri. I would like to ask you a question. And I think one of the most popular questions are, can you tell me about your experience? So definitely, if, tell me about your experience or something that you liked at the school, etc. So I think that's a very legitimate question. So the LBS presentation topics, now I have a question. Are they customized on the background of candidates, or they're random? Completely random. Okay, so the way it works is the LBS interviewer will receive 5 topics and he will choose one of them. The way I used to choose the topics, I used to look at the page, and I think I usually used to choose just the shortest question because I wanted to make it a bit easier for the interviewee. So I just, if I used to see one that has 5 lines and one that has 3, I used to choose the one with 3. That was very random. Sometimes I used to just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or I used to, I think I once asked my interviewee, choose a number from 1 to 5. So it's completely random. The chances that this topic will be something around your profile are slim. Okay, so most chances are it won't be around your profile, and you can't prepare for this. So all you can do is kind of well, you can prepare with random questions, and all you can do is kind of remember the structure. I was asked to present about XYZ. My answer is 1, 2, 3. To summarize, I was asked, okay, so that kind of structure, and at least you have a clear structure. Now, I hope the answer makes sense. Okay, just a few more questions to go. I think we have 4 more, but if you have more questions, I'm still here. This is a tough question. Is the presentation can be called close to producing an argument in favor of the topic? Yeah, I think I understand your question. So yes, some of the questions, some of the presentation topics can be like, are you in favor of X or are you against it? Let me give you an example. One of my topics I remember were, you are a CEO of a company and your shareholders are telling you that your only job is to maximize shareholder value. Do you agree with this statement? Okay, so I was asked to present, should CEOs only maximize shareholders' values? In my opinion, no, this isn't their only task. Yes, they should maximize shareholders' value, but they have to be responsible for communities. They can't lie, they can't cheat. They have to make sure that their workplace is a good environment and a safe environment. And again, the shareholders might think short term, but you need to think about the brand of the company long term. And if the shareholders get a bit of money, but then no one wants to work at my company, that's not good. So I need to think about lots of other things. And also, how do I maximize shareholders' value? To conclude, I was asked, should CEOs only maximize shareholders' values? In my opinion, that's definitely a big part of their job, but not the only part. So here I gave you my argument. I gave you my opinion about the question. By the way, the interviewer might think differently, but the presentation wasn't about the interviewer, does he agree with you or not? That's not the task. The task here is, can you present in a clear way a new topic? And I think I did. I hope I did. Another question is, will you get admitted solely because of your interview? Tough question. So you've passed the first stage, okay? They've screened your application. They've screened your CV. They've screened your recommendations. They wanted you to get interviewed. I would say this. If your interview is perfect, you got into the school. If your interview is terrible, you're out of the school, okay? If the interview was mediocre, now they might go back to your original application and compare your total score, okay? So there isn't always a score, but let's think that the score is between 1 to 5, okay? 5 being amazing, 1 being terrible. So let's say you got a 3 on your application, and let's say you got a 2 on your interview. So now they're saying, okay, let's give a 50% to both of those. You have a 5, and the threshold is 6. So you had a mediocre interview, and you didn't pass. But if you would have gotten a 3, which is a mediocre plus interview, maybe you would have passed. So again, amazing interview, yes, you've passed. Terrible interview, no, you haven't. Somewhere in the middle, well, it depends on the other interviewees, on other people around the world, on other candidates. Okay. So someone's asking, well, this is a bit late, but asking, is my presentation only aimed for MBAs or is it for other schools as well, other programs as well? It's very, very similar for other programs as well. Okay, so also Master in Finance or Financial Analytics, same process, same application process. You might have an interview with very similar questions. Obviously, in an MBA, there's more managerial questions, and in finance degrees, there'll be more finance questions. In younger programs like Master in Management or Financial Analytics, no one's going to dig into your work experience because these programs are for people with very little work experience. So again, there are a few adjustments, but it's very similar. Okay, I think I'm down to last 3 questions. I'm still working on my Gmat score. Should I apply for round 2? Oh, come on, I don't know the answer to this. So I would say this. You always want to apply as early as possible when your application is maximized. Okay, so if you can work now on an amazing application without harming your Gmat and get the best Gmat score, so apply in round 2. But if by working on your application this will harm you working on your Gmat, then you're gonna fail. So it's up to you. If you have time to work both on your application and on your Gmat, you should do that. If not. Sorry, I hope that answers it. Okay, last two questions. For alumni interviews, does admissions calibrate the profile in case the interview has a bad day at work? Such a good question. So I actually had this with INSEAD a few days ago. I'll try not to mention too many details, but my candidate rang me after the interview, and all I can say is his interviewer had a bad day. He was rude throughout the interview. It was about 22 minutes. And at the end of the interview, he actually said to the candidate, I don't understand why someone as young as you is even applying for an MBA. So it was a bit rude. And I don't know if the interviewer had a bad day or just didn't like the candidate. That can also happen. To be honest, there's nothing you can do about this. You can't complain to the school. It won't help. You can't complain to yourself. And this happens. You have a better connection with some people and a worse connection with others. And the interviewers are people. And yeah, I had a fight with my wife this morning, and I had a pigeon poo on my window, and I'm really upset because my coffee didn't come on time. Okay, so I may have had a bad day. Obviously, I'll try and be as professional as I can in my interview with you, but that might not happen. All you can do as a candidate is help me as much as possible. You be as polite as possible and hope for the best. But there's nothing much you can do. Hopefully, even if I'm rude and unprofessional, I'll still, give you the same points I would have given you if I'm nice and professional. Actually, I'll give another example. I used to be a very nice interviewer. Okay, I can tell you that. My interviews used to take an hour and a half. I used to smile a lot. I used to say nearly after every answer, wow, that's such a nice answer. Thank you for that. And I used to give a lot of examples from my experience. But to be honest, I used to do this also for candidates I didn't think were very good. Okay, so I used to give a good experience, I think, to the interviewee. And on the other hand, I know some interviewers who didn't do that. And if the candidate wasn't good, they stopped the interview after 25 minutes. And my interview acceptance rates, let's call it like that, the people who I interviewed that got into London Business School, and my fellow London Business School interviewer who didn't interview nicely, his acceptance rates were the same. So the fact that the interviewer isn't giving you a nice interview, or the environment doesn't feel nice, or you feel he's having a bad day, doesn't mean you won't pass the interview. Okay, last question. Where can you get topics for presentations? Well, try and Google it. I don't know. When we work with candidates on interview preparation, so we give them some topics. I think for London Business School presentation, if you Google some topics, you might find some. And if not, again, just make them up and try and work a bit on the structure that I gave, or contact me and I'll give you some topics. Okay, so we finished. I hope this was okay. I know it was. I was trying to speak very fast, so we answer a lot of questions. I hope you enjoyed this. I think I was very generic regarding any top MBA program, but I did try and give some London Business School and INSEAD advice. Check us out on ARINGO.com. I think London Business School and INSEAD are the schools that have our highest acceptance rates. You can see all our stats online. We used to do interview preparation, of course, and lots of luck to you guys applying for MBAs. I'm Shimri. Thanks very much. And again, feel free to send me your profile and your CV and Gmat to my email, and I can help you with specific advice. That's it. Thank you, Gmat Club, and see you in our next presentations. Bye-bye.